Hi, I'm Krutika, and today's conversation is with Anjali. In the words of Alesha Keyes, this girl is on fire. A senior project surveyor, fierce advocate for diversity and inclusion in construction, public speaker, newly appointed chair of the Chartered Institute of Building, and oh, did I mention she's also got a black belt in Taekwondo? Talk about a powerhouse. I feel Anjali is the modern woman that we all aspire to want to be. She shares her journey into construction, the challenges she's faced in a male dominated field, and why she's so passionate about driving change. From dealing with inappropriate remarks to the incident that pushed her to take up martial arts for self defense, this conversation opened my eyes to an industry I knew very little about. Hi, Anjali. So lovely to have you on my podcast today. How are you?
Hi, I'm great, thank you. How are you?
I am really good, thank you very much. And actually, just before we hit the record button, I did a little bit of stalking just to get to know you a little bit better. And honestly, it's fascinating. You've got a page called Indian Girl on Site. And I
Yes.
hadn't realised that you recently got a seat in the seat as a chair, I should say, in the Chartered Institute of Building. Is that correct?
Yes, it is. Yeah. Gosh, you're already starting and making me blush.
That sounds like quite the achievement, Anjali. I mean, was there a rigorous selection process that was involved in you getting that seat?
Yeah, so I was already sitting on the panel, and then, like your normal terms of reference, the chair comes to an end after a 2-year tenure, and it was up for election. So I basically put myself forward. Lots of people kind of pushed me to do it. I wasn't really thinking I was worthy of that seat, but I thought, hey, why not try it out and see if I get it? And yeah, I went through an interview process, and then I found out that I got it, which was amazing.
That is amazing. That sounds fantastic. And I'm sure we're going to circle back to a lot of the amazing work that you do within the industry that you work in. But you know what? I'm going to hold my hands up firstly and just kind of admit that even when I was looking into what you do in the construction industry that you are a part of, I have for the longest time always associated it as being male dominated. I've also just thought about construction as being the actual manual labor work that you do to build a house or build a commercial site. And beyond that, I didn't realize that there were all these other roles that are
Yes.
part of the construction industry, which I feel is a misconception for a lot of people. So I kind of want to start by asking you, why construction, and how is that mapped out for you so far?
Yeah. Right, before I actually answer that question, I'm going to ask you a quick question and then I'll tell you the answer later. How many job roles do you think there are in construction?
Now, do you know what? Because I listened to your previous podcast, I know the answer to this.
Oh,
There's
okay.
definitely over 100.
Okay, that's great. I won't tell you the answer yet then, but you're close, so that's good. So to answer your question then, for me, my journey in construction initially didn't start off smooth sailing. I was in sixth form and teachers were saying to me, right, what are your next steps? What is your career path? And looking at us all being Asian, it was either two things, right? You either go down something mathematical, accounting, finance, or you become a doctor or a dentist and you have to do something with sciences. There was limited options for us through society norms and people were just saying kind of shoehorn into a box. And I didn't really want to. And teachers kept telling me if I wanted to look at an apprenticeship or any other option, I was actually letting my future slide. They were saying, you're a high academic achiever, go down something else, academic. And I really didn't want to, but I kind of conformed to society and I did my UCAS application and I did pick accounting and finance because, I was studying business and accounting at the time at A levels. So it was, an easy option for me to pick. And what happened was I did my UCAS application. I went on a family holiday and I had to come back alone early to get my UCAS results. And I landed at the airport the day of results day. I turned my phone on and I got a text. And the text said, congratulations, you've been accepted to Brunel University. And what should have really been such a happy moment for me, I should have been calling my parents, my family, everyone to say, I got in. I felt nothing. I was numb. And I was just thinking, I just want to get my bags and get out of here. And this is just another part of, my life. And, I enrolled at Brunel. I was 2 weeks onto the course and I sat at the back of the auditorium one day and I saw a sea of people who from the back, if you tap them on the shoulder, it could have been me. And they all looked like me, they spoke like me, everybody had the same background. And if you ask 50% of those people, why are you really here? They will all say, because we don't know any other different industry. People like us all go down this route. And that was my breakthrough at that point. I just thought, no, I knew I wanted to go into construction because of my dad being in construction from a young age. I was seeing what he was doing, the graft he was having. And I really just thought, no, I want to go into construction. So after 2 weeks, I handed in my notice and I was selling my textbooks in the library to hustle that money back to then go into H&M in Uxbridge to then basically buy work clothes. And on Monday, I started working with my dad in construction, and I didn't even know what hustle I was getting into, but I knew it was a brighter future.
And that's incredible. Not many people are brave enough to actually recognize that a decision that they've made is not the right decision for them. And as you put it, people end up conforming to what societal expectations might be for them. Now, I'm going to admit, I'm an accountant.
My bad.
But I've actually moved away from the conventional accounting roles that one might perceive accountants to be doing. You mentioned that your dad was in construction at the time. So presumably then, as an Indian father, he wasn't too taken aback by your decision to throw away the accounting future, as it were.
Well, I think it was quite interesting because my elder sister's an accountant, my middle sister, she's gone in to do law, and then there was me. So I was next in line to make a big decision, and it was either or sort of thing for me. But for me, my dad, I guess, knew what the industry was like, what the challenges were. And I think he was maybe safeguarding and protecting me from coming into an industry so young at the age of 18. So I think he had his reservations knowing the challenges he had faced, which none of us as a family even knew about until I started working in the industry when challenges were coming my way. Did I actually take a step back to think, wow, my dad has probably gone through worse than me, had limited support, and look at where he is.
We'll come back to some of the challenges that you mentioned. But I know of late you have been advocating in the diversity and equality space within the industry that has been typically male dominated. So, what was it that inspired you to want to advocate within that space?
I think it really comes down to two things. One being exposure for other people to understand what our industry actually is and what it offers. Going back to the question I asked you earlier, how many job roles are there? There's nearly up to 182 the last time I
Wow.
checked that are named. And we make up such a massive percentage of the job options within the UK, where people only think of the manual, hands on, walking past the building site, only those trade job roles, or lots of people within our own community have previously worked in trades rather than seeing the professional job roles. I mean, you can be a lawyer in construction. There's so many different options. So I think the first thing for me was exposure. The second thing that really inspired me was education, and not just educating the sector that I'm in about the needs and the different diversity of thought that we could have in the industry through my own experiences I was having, but also education to our community about the world actually being more open to people like us now, and that there are places for everybody in this world and the potential prospects.
So, you mentioned exposure and education as the two
Yes.
key things. Was there a particular event that resulted in you wanting to advocate more?
Yeah, I think for me it was my personal experience on sites. I was based on a project quite early on in my career where I was very naive. My dad and the people around me have all known me from such a young age. So the people I was around early on in my career were very much sheltering me from what the industry was really like. And then I got put on this one project where I needed to be more site based. So I wasn't going with someone else. And then I started realizing, hold on a minute, when I'm alone versus when I'm chaperoned with another male colleague, it is very different. I started getting a lot of abuse sometimes. I was put in uncomfortable positions, but it made me stronger. And I mean, I still get it today. I mean, even this week, I had a very uncomfortable comment put towards me where I came back after the meeting and I just told my dad, and I was like, is this normal? And he goes, wow, they can't say that to you. I'm like so far into my journey now. So things like that still trigger me to say I still need to do more in this industry. And that's what really keeps me going, I think.
You mentioned abuse just now that you experienced more recently, and even your dad was shocked by it. Would you say that over the years you've seen changes in the industry, or
I think there's definitely change happening, but I put it down to the whole education piece, the fact that the people I work with don't necessarily know how to work with people beyond the people that are like them and speak like them. It's a very white male dominated environment, and they have certain cultures and environments that they've all grown up around. And now we're trying to break that mold and make it more inclusive. It's about how we educate them to make conversations inclusive towards us and not make us feel uncomfortable in positions sometimes.
I think you've alluded to this in the answer you've given already, but I'll just ask you, what were some of the very early challenges that you experienced when you started out in this industry?
I mean, the first challenge I got on my first day was someone said to me, you're in a man's world and you're not going to last your probation period. I was 18. It was comments like that that make you rethink, is this industry for me? Am I worthy? Because for me, it's not just about all this advocacy work I'm doing. I want to be known for my job, what it is I do professionally, because that is what I love. Don't get me wrong, I love doing all this outreach and meeting new people, but one day I hope we don't have to do all of this because the industry should be so inclusive that we're celebrating people rather than telling people we need to celebrate people, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. And can I just ask, what is the job that you do on a day-to-day basis?
So I am a senior project surveyor. It is kind of like accounting, being a quantity surveyor. So I kind of did fall back down that path, but I do accounting of buildings basically. So I price up works, how much it's going to cost. So, for example, if the government know we need new hospitals or schools to cater for the needs that we have, most people would have heard about the housing crisis right now. So you will know we need to build X amount of houses. So it's my job to then go in, price up bits, and then if we win up that work, it's then really important for me to check the contracts, read contracts, make sure everything we've agreed to doing in terms of the works is as is. Once we then go on site and we're actually building, I then go and survey. I then make sure we're doing everything and I put in monthly applications for work. There's a lot I do, project management, and so on, but I don't want to bore you with all of that.
That sounds like you wear a lot of hats in the workplace and there's a lot of skill set that's required. And again, that's something that I've just learned even from, the conversation we're having. Earlier, you mentioned that, one of your first kind of challenges was someone telling you you've entered a man's world.
Yeah.
Have there been any moments where you were like, gosh, this is not for me?
Think, yeah, through moments like that, through the slurred language that's kind of come towards me, I think I've always felt, you have those moments, but then you realize the job you're doing, the legacy of communities you're building, and just seeing some of these projects come to life and seeing the end users then go in, that for me is so rewarding. I mean, we recently did a children's hospital for cancer patients for day treatment, and I went back over Easter through the temple to give some Easter eggs back to the same hospital. And so it was such a full circle moment for me, thinking, I've been on this project, we worked so hard for so many years, we saw it through. We can see the patients now using it, which is great because there's high-end facilities for them. And then it was so nice to give back in a different way.
That sort of giving back piece as well, the sort of children that you referred to, I wouldn't have thought of that as being a reward, I suppose, of being
Yeah.
in the job role that you do. So would you say that has been one of the most rewarding projects that you've worked on in the construction space?
Yeah, I think so. I think for me, just the hospitals we work on, the schools we work on, just knowing you're giving someone a better life, another chance at life, maybe even through a hospital, is so rewarding.
Are you one of the only females in your team, or do you have other females that work with you?
We're actually a very diverse company. We have a 50-50 split in our office, which is great. I mean, in construction, that's kind of unheard of.
Yeah. Do you know off the top of your head the sort of number of women that enter this industry?
It is low, yeah. So women make up about 13 to 15%. I mean, the stats haven't been refreshed in a really long time, but from the research when I was doing it through my dissertation was about 13%.
And when did you start actually advocating for the diversity, inclusion of women and those from ethnic minorities in the construction industry?
It actually started when I was at uni. So I was working and I was studying part time. So I had a day release where one day a week I would go to study, and the other 4 days I was in the office working or out on site learning. And it was great. So I was in my final year of uni, and my dissertation tutor, who was a great lecturer for me, sat me down early on and he said, "Right, Anjali, I want you to write something that's going to leave the four walls of university. I want you to carry something on beyond this." And I thought, well, the only thing I can really do research into is why people aren't coming into construction, why the next generation, people like me, aren't coming in. So I did my dissertation research, and I got an opportunity to carry out research as part of the dissertation. And what I did was I went back to my old high school to ask the sixth formers, would you consider a career in construction? And when I did that survey, the statistics I found from just my own questions was that people thought their parents would be more proud if they were a pop star or a celebrity rather than a construction worker. I think that was like a 80% people said, no, I would prefer to work in something else other than construction. And then I thought, right, need to make a change here. And that is where, all my work in this space kind of started. So my dissertation was done, and then the same lecturer gave me a contact to then go speak at an event to showcase this research. So I went, and I had no expectations, but I actually invited my dad and my uncle, who had actually given me the opportunity to work in this industry. And then from there, from that one event I did, every single person in that room then gave me an opportunity to do something else in the industry. And then it's just kind of rolled over like that, I guess.
And so now you've added what, public speaking to your skill stack as well? Do you do a lot of that through the advocacy work that you're doing?
Yeah, so I started doing quite a lot of panel talks and stuff quite early on, straight after my dissertation research. But then I went on to go in to do a lot more STEM work, which I'm most proud of, because I can talk about it to an industry, but in order to get the next generation in, you have to inspire them. And so I just do a lot of outreach to schools, just partnering up with a lot of these STEM networks and do work through that.
Just so our listeners know, what does STEM stand for?
So STEM stands for science, technology, engineering, and maths. So a lot of people don't think construction falls within that STEM bracket, but really every single one of those capital letters fall within construction, not just the engineering.
For those that are listening and potentially interested in a career within this space, what are the academic options or routes that are open to them?
So I'll talk you through first my academic route in. So what I did was I went back to college and I did a HNC in construction and the built environment. Now, some people thought that this was a step back, but really I was gaining the foundation knowledge into construction, even though I had my A levels. But I never think education is a step back. Learning something new is always great. So I did that for 2 years, and then I then transferred into a part-time degree at Westminster, which was called Quantity Surveying and Commercial Management. Now, there are so many degrees that you can take on either through a part time option, which can take 5 years, or you can do it on a full time route, which is 3 years. The benefit of doing a part time course is if you're working, of course, you've got that flexibility, but you have options at college to learn different trades if you wanted to, or managerial roles. There's lots through the city and guilds that you can go down as well.
And apologies for my ignorance, you mentioned HNC. Does that acronym stand for something?
So a HNC is a higher national certificate. So you can do a HNC through an apprenticeship scheme, or you can do it as a full-time student. The best thing that I want to share though about my HNC journey was I went and studied it at college of Northwest London, which has a mix of ages of students. I mean, although I was one of the youngest people on the course, we had people who were mature students who had been working in the industry for years, but just needed another qualification under their belt.
Something I wanted to ask you that you sort of briefly touched on earlier is all the outreach work that you're doing. Have there been any specific projects or moments or public speaking events that you've done where you feel like you might have made the biggest impact?
I think it's definitely when I do the STEM work and I just see the young kids, and when I walk in and I ask, "What do you think of construction?" And then I leave and ask them the same question, and their answer, sorry, has just changed. For me, it's seeing their lives change.
And as you've been more involved in pushing for change in this space, how has this journey actually shaped you personally and professionally?
If you ask me what would other people say, I think it's that I've become a role model. It shaped me into someone that people can look up to, and not just within the construction industry. I mean, my cousins say it to me all the time, like they're proud of me and they hope that my nieces and nephews learn things from me. And I'm like, wow, for them to say that is quite a big thing for any parent to say, you're a role model to my child. But for me, it's when I do other activities. So I used to do taekwondo myself, and I used to also teach kids football. So even when I was teaching kids taekwondo, I did some stuff through the industry, which ended up being on Snapchat, through the media. And then I had kids coming in saying, Miss, you're on Snapchat. I didn't know you did this. And for them to learn about me and construction as a career through social media, and then be able to then start coming to me because they feel comfortable to ask for career advice, I think that was so important.
You've just casually slipped in there that you do taekwondo. So now I have to ask you about how did you get into taekwondo?
I've always wanted to do a martial art when I was in school. I mean, I remember doing like a lunchtime club doing a martial art, and I just thought I really wanted to do more. But growing up, my parents had four kids, and it wasn't really something they could expense. So when I started working, I started saving my own money, and I was then able to pay for these things myself. And I kept thinking about it, and then I started having some of these challenges, I would say, in the industry, and I thought I want to learn how to defend myself, build my confidence a bit. And I thought martial arts would be a great way. I think people actually take for granted the other skill sets you learn from sports. It's not necessarily just picking up the skill of the sport, but just teamwork, confidence. Yeah, the discipline.
Firstly, the fact that you've picked up taekwondo and you've persevered with it, absolutely brilliant. And martial arts feels like one of those things I've always wanted to get into. It just always looks so cool when I see all the social media posts about
So
people
why don't
engaging.
you?
I know, I really should. I picked up Pilates and Zumba over the last couple of years, which I'm really enjoying.
Yeah.
I'm trying out my first reformer Pilates class in a couple of weeks as
Oh,
well.
amazing.
So yeah, maybe once I've built up a bit more strength and stamina, who knows, I might join you, Anjali, for a taekwondo class.
When I started Taekwondo, I was the eldest one in the class, and there was all these little kids who were able to kick so high and get it all. And I was like, I'm XYZ years old. How can I not get this? But again, it goes down to the discipline. It disciplined me, it taught me a lot, and it just showed that I can learn something no matter my age.
Really well put. And actually, you mentioned something which I hope I heard correctly. You said you also got into taekwondo because of wanting to protect yourself at work. Was there an incident, if you don't mind me asking, that took place that resulted in you wanting to feel like you needed to have some sort of self-defense skills?
Yeah, so going back to one of the challenges I had when I was working on this project, and I got put on the project more on a full-time basis. I was in the corridor one day and the client was walking around, and an altercation kind of happened between somebody who worked with us and someone else. And I just kindly went over to just say, the client's walking around, maybe just, tone it down a bit. And the guy who was having an argument with one of my colleagues didn't like the fact that I told him to, tone it down a bit because the client was coming. And the aggression then changed completely to me. And I was in a narrow corridor and someone got put up quite close to me. And I just thought at that moment, I never know when I'm going to need this. Once the incident happened, everyone was quite concerned about me getting home. I mean, I didn't even think about getting home. And when I left the site, I was looking over my shoulder all the way until I got home, thinking, is this person going to jump back out again? So I think for me, it was just being able to protect myself, whether it's work or outside of work. I think it's great that I've got a good skill set now to be able to, protect me, my family, and people around me.
I'm so sorry that you had to deal with that at that altercation that took place. But it's great that you now have Taekwondo up your sleeve. And have you ever had to use any of your moves on anyone?
No, no, definitely not. But I think everybody on site, knowing that I know Taekwondo, kind of scares them off a bit.
Earlier, you mentioned how you have nieces and nephews that look up to you as a role model. But I wanted to ask you, have you had any role models in your life that have helped you navigate your journey in the construction space?
I've had so many people who have come into my life and influenced it for the better. I think it's kept me really grounded and it's kept me rethinking things constantly because I'm always hearing diversity of thought through other people. I think the biggest person I've looked up to are my parents, just knowing their journey and what they've done for us as a family and the foundations they've created. That has really supported me in my journey. I mean, if it wasn't for my dad being so honest with me about, his upbringing and all his stories, I wouldn't know and appreciate the graft he's had to make me want to graft more in my career. And even for my mum, she put all of her dreams and her career on the back burner to raise four of us and to make sure we had the best education. So my parents are just very influential to my journey, I would say.
And you work with your dad, right? Is that correct?
Yes, yeah.
What's that experience like? Is he the big boss in the office or are you the boss?
So we made a pact to kind of stay away from each other quite early on because he didn't want me and him working together to influence people's judgments on me. So for a very long time, we didn't even tell people we were related. They then started seeing us on site or seeing me and thinking, no, you definitely look like your dad. He wanted me to have a very honest upbringing into the industry without people then judging me as his daughter, because lots of people just thought it was an easy route for me to just go work for my dad. Oh, you've had it easy. It's been handed to you on a silver platter or whatever. Some people even thought I failed my A levels because I started going to work there. So they just thought, oh, she probably didn't even get into uni or whatever. But they wanted me to have my own journey. So I think that was very important.
So, no preferential treatment for you in the workplace then because your dad's around?
No, definitely not. If anything, and I think it goes without saying that this is probably a lot of people who work for a family business, you have to work so much more harder to make sure all your colleagues respect you more. I would never want another colleague of mine to think I was ever getting preferential treatment or that I wasn't working my way in it up in the correct manner. I want everyone to be equal. And so I wouldn't want me, just because my dad works there, to get that benefit.
As the industry starts to sort of evolve, what changes do you specifically want to see over the next, let's say, 5 to 10 years?
I think the biggest change I want to see is more people seeing construction for its actual worth. Beyond all of these challenges and all the things you hear in the media about poor construction, etc., I want people to actually see the value added in construction, that legacy, what we're doing, what communities we're building, how we're creating safe havens for people. I think that's the biggest change I want to see, a massive cultural shift where people are feeling welcome in this industry.
Specifically for young women that are thinking about entering this industry or underrepresented individuals that want to follow perhaps in your footsteps, can you offer some words of advice for them?
So I'll offer some very generic advice to anybody listening, not just anyone wanting to come into construction, but anyone who wants to break free from society norms. I would say follow your passion because you will have a much happier, healthier, and successful life and career if you do what you love and with a passion. And yeah, don't conform to society norms.
So beautifully put and so simple, yet so effective. Follow your passion. Now, I ask all my guests a final question, which is what journey are you on next?
I'll be honest, I don't know what's next around the door because this industry's taken me by storm. I mean, I could be waking up on Monday and being thrown an opportunity which I never even thought of or dreamt of. I want to continue what I'm doing in my job role and continue to graft and make sure our business is as successful as it can be. But on the side, the journey for all this advocacy work, I hope that I'm unemployed in that arena soon, because I don't want to be on platforms telling people about all these stories and stuff. I want to be celebrating people, celebrating our industry for the better. And yeah, that's what my next steps are, I guess.
Amazing. Thank you so much for joining me on this conversation. I'll be sure to link your Instagram page, Indian Girl on Site, because it's fascinating stuff for anyone that's interested.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Journeys with Krutika. If you enjoyed this episode, please rate and share. I'd love for you to hit the follow button wherever you get your podcast so you never miss an episode. And if you have a journey that you want to share, email me at journeyswithkrutika@gmail.com or reach out via my socials. I'm on Instagram and TikTok. Just search Journeys with Krutika, because your journey is extraordinary.